Good morning. How are you doing? I hope your Monday is off to a fabulous start. I am having a great day. I've already tried to record this one time only to find out it didn't record, so we're going to try it again. This morning, my video is about marriage, how to create an extraordinary marriage. I've been married for 16 years to a fabulous guy, Edwin Strickland. We have 5 wonderful kids. And so I know a little bit about what it takes to have an extraordinary marriage. Not only do I know through experience, I also know that success leaves clues, and I have made it a point to spend my time studying other people with successful marriages. In fact, just a few days ago, I happened to encounter the cutest couple. They were both in their 70s and they had been married for 60 years. And even after all that time, it was so amazing to see the love in their eyes, how they took care of each other, how they finished each other's sentences. And after watching them for a few minutes, I walked up and introduced myself and said, "Hey, do you have any advice for a girl who's only been married 16 years?" And almost in unison, they said, "Here are the 3 things you got to do if you want to be happy. You got to love unconditionally, you have to forgive quickly, and you have to have fun." Now, I figured they would know. Anybody who's been married for 60 years and still holds hands when they go in to have lunch, they know something we can learn. So always remember, as you're trying to better your marriage, success leaves clues. Look around with other people who are in successful marriages. Look at what you can learn from them. There may be some things you can learn from one couple, other things you have to learn from other couples. But the one thing I know that your environment is always working on you. And if you spend time with people who are miserable in their marriage, you're going to be miserable in your marriage. Maybe you're right there right now and you're miserable in your marriage. You're thinking something has to change. We have to do something different. Well, great. I'm glad you're listening to me today. And the first thing you've got to do is you've got to change your environment, because the law of environment says your environment is always working on you and it's always stronger than you. Now, you may ask yourself, "Hey, what qualifies this lady right here to tell me this?" Well, let me tell you a little bit about my story. The first year we were married, it was absolutely phenomenal. We're in the honeymoon stage. Everyone's all careful for each other and considerate and kind and loving. And then in year 2, something interesting happened. I started law school. He started student teaching. We had a foster child, and we adopted a baby at 7 days old. Now, you may be thinking we were crazy. And the truth is, we were. We had no idea what we were getting into. And not only that, we didn't have any skills in place, any strategies to help us navigate the tough times. So, as you can imagine, the stress of all of those things began to take its toll on our relationship. By the end of that second year, we barely even liked each other. So we would talk about what we needed to do in order to fix our relationship, and we decided that we needed to talk to some other couples. And so we started looking for people we could talk to. And you know what we found out? That when you really started talking to people, even the people who looked good in public, when you got them behind closed doors, they didn't like each other either. Well, we knew that we were never going to be successfully married if we didn't find some successful role models, because our personalities are not the type of personalities that could just stay in a situation and be miserable. So we got real aggressive about taking control of our marriage and changing it. And so, over the next year or so, God strategically put people in our place that gave us wisdom and insight. And at this time, we were believers, but we didn't really know that you could look in the Bible and find words of wisdom and success for your marriage. All we really kind of knew was submit and love, but we didn't really know what that meant practically, how to actually do it. So here are just a few things that I want to share with you that we've learned that have worked for us over the last 13 years. Now, maybe they won't all work for you, but at least they're a start, and they're things that you can take and modify and make work for your own relationship. So let's get started. Are you ready? Are you excited? Are you ready to have an extraordinary marriage? Okay. Step number one. Step number one is my expectation comes from God. Too often in our relationships, we are looking for someone else to satisfy us. And so often in our society, because by the time people get married, they've already experienced bad relationships. Their eighth grade boyfriend broke their heart. Their 10th grade girlfriend broke their heart. Their college sweetheart ran away with their best friend. And so they get married with all of this baggage. And so now there is this unrealistic expectation that this one person can fulfill all of your needs. If that's what you've been thinking, it's not gonna happen. No matter how much someone loves you, they cannot fulfill all of your needs. No matter how much you love someone, you can't be everything they need. I personally believe that we were all created to have connection with God, and that it is in that connection with God that our identity and our security begins to form. And that when we look to God for our identity, when we look to God for our security, it makes us easy to love and to be loved. I want you to think about it in this terms. If I'm broken and he's broken, when we get together, we don't make a whole, we just make two fragmented pieces. And so many times that's what happens in marriage. And I believe that that has a huge impact on our divorce rate, because two broken people get married. They have careers and kids and stress without being whole. So for us personally, we found that there were things in our life, things that had happened to us in other relationships, things that had happened to us growing up, that we had to allow God to heal us from. Now, the other part of that expectation from God is that only God can teach you how to be a spouse, and only God can teach your spouse how to be a spouse to you. So Psalm 62 says, my expectation is from God, in him only will I trust. We learn to take that very literally. If my husband was doing something, and sometimes as wives, I'm sure you've done this. I'm sure I'm not the only one. You just think you can just nag your husband to death. You're just going to nag him into submission, nag him into compliance. And it never works, at least not long term. So the things that meant that much to me, I started talking to God about it. I started praying about it. Sometimes I found out that my belief was unrealistic, that what I wanted, Edwin couldn't possibly give me. And other times I found out that Edwin would come to me and say, hey, I've been really thinking that I need to change this thing that I've been talking about for 3 months. So if we're going to be successfully married, we cannot put all of the pressure on our spouse to meet our needs. Our spouse should be an addition to our life, a gift to our life. They should not be the person who is the sum total of our life. Let me give you a great example that might make sense to you. One thing I've noticed about women sometimes is that, your husband can come in from a day and he's a little quiet, and because you know him, you know that something's wrong. And then you ask him what's wrong, and he goes, nothing. And you're like, no, really, what's wrong? He's like, nothing. And you can personally take that on and now start projecting that he's upset with you or whatever the case may be, when it really may just be that he needs some downtime. You have to be able to not have so much vested of your identity in him that now his bad mood or his down mood or his need for quiet time or his need for football with the boys or whatever now makes you feel like you don't have value. You have to be independently whole through your relationship with Christ, so that when you guys come together, you add to each other. And that may be something that you need to fix in your marriage. And before we end this little video clip, I'm going to give you some things that you can do to begin to make those changes. So the first thing is that you have to get your expectation from God. You cannot expect any human being, no matter how amazing, no matter how fabulous, to change you and make you whole and keep you satisfied. That only comes from God. Number two, you've got to decide that divorce is not an option. In this world of breakup, makeup, date new people, get back together again, by the time we get married, we are so used to breaking up that many people go into a marriage with the mentality that if it doesn't work, I'll just try it again. But one of the things our statistics are telling us is that people who get divorced the first time are even more likely to get divorced the second time. Because one of the things that you find is that in most cases, you are the common denominator. The problem is you. Not just you, but there is a role that you're playing. No relationship breaks down just because of one person. It takes two to make it work, and it takes two to make it fail. And so you have to decide that divorce is not an option. That means when you fight, you don't say things like, maybe this wasn't the right choice. Maybe I should have married Joe instead. You take divorce off the table. And then you take unhappiness off the table. So you say, not only are we not going to get divorced, we're not going to be unhappy. What does that do? That creates the scenario in your brain to get creative. If we're not going to get divorced and we're not going to be unhappy, then what's our option? We're going to be happily married. So what does it take to make us happily married? Which brings us into a counter sub part of that called critical conversations. If you're going to be happily married, you have to be able to have critical conversations. Now, critical conversations, they don't always feel great to begin with. But if you allow them to do what they're supposed to do, which is to expose the things that could potentially destroy your relationship, then you strengthen your relationship, you fortify it, and you create an intimacy that says, we can talk about anything, even when it's painful. I'll support you even when I don't understand why you're crying, even when I don't understand why you're so crazy. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's thought it. So we have to decide that divorce is not an option. We have to have a commitment to work out our issues. Now, let me say as an aside, if you are being abused by your spouse or your children are being abused, I am not telling you to stay